The project is called Public2, but I know it's tough to type. It was a public performance along the streetcar line in Kansas City, Missouri. The cast was Trina Warren, Leo Gaydon, Tristan Griffin. The choreography was by myself in collaboration with the dancers, and it was the cinematography, editing, uploading to online was conducted by Ian Garrett. The premise of the project was how public art can investigate in the way like a microscope, directing attention towards overlooked and mundane locales within a city. The performer's body becomes something between an expressive artistic tool and a medium, embodying qualities of both camera and canvas. As artists, we generate a conceptual feedback loop by documenting and describing the environment's history, architectural features, and inhabitants, while simultaneously inhabiting and becoming new history and architecture. It created an indelible memory on the location for all who witness and take part. Public2 went a step further and reimagined what public space is through the medium of VR, expanding how it is created and accessed within a city, further establishing that public space isn't just a segment of land designated by a city planner or council, but it is a mindset shared by the inhabitants who occupy that public space, literally the ground they're standing on. The project led by example in content and in the way the audience interfaced with it. Public2 made space for the audience to also believe that they have permission to create and play in Kansas City. The project consisted of 3 VR videos, one at 3 different stops along the streetcar line, and 1 live performance that took place at the main Union Station. The VR videos were accessed on a dedicated website and an online map of each of the 3 video locations. It was funded by a public grant from Art in the Loop and the Kansas City Downtown Council. The project was made very quickly. We had about 2 months from receiving the grant to when the videos had to be up and running. So as opposed to the other projects that have been discussed so far, it was kind of down and dirty. Outside of a 1-day play date with Ian and a VR camera, this was my first VR choreographic project. A few things went right. The community involvement that happened due to rehearsing, shooting, and being in public space was really fantastic. We became good friends with a lot of the streetcar conductors and riders. We worked together collectively to think outside of any boxes that we were choreographically and conceptually placing ourselves in, but mostly the success of it was learning from all the things that didn't really turn out well. As one of my favorite oblique strategy cards states, honor thy error as hidden intention. VR can be a vehicle for many forms of art and performance, but what I've learned is it really is a medium unto itself. Last week, I recently learned to scuba dive, and at 70 feet down at the bottom of the ocean, the world feels very different. Your perception of space, of rhythm, how your body feels in space is really different. I kind of feel like VR is sort of similar. Creating in virtual space is not like creating in a physical reality. Rhythm, depth of field, and the specificity of gesture all changes. I've really spent about 20 years of my career working in site-specific and responsive performance. Installations, it's my thing, and I thought applying what I've learned over these years to VR would feel really natural and easy, and it wasn't. At one of the locations, it was a large open plaza with skywalks and crosswalks crossing the intersection. And as a live performance, it would have been a really interesting space for the audience to navigate visually, watching performers cross through these spaces, using space and depth in a quite unique way. But with the VR camera, you couldn't see anything at all. So we spent about 5 hours videoing that, and none of the footage was usable. You couldn't even make out something that happened across the street. So we began working closer to the camera, but the performers really struggled with perceiving how they would appear and feel like to the VR audience. They were concerned about literally hitting the camera, and struggled with orientating themselves and front towards the camera as they moved around it. And because rendering takes so long, it wasn't possible for them to watch what we had filmed, so they had to wing it. The space in which you can compose in is really reduced, and obviously there is no front. Often dancers use depth of field and distance from an audience to direct what is the focal point in live performance, and that is in a way taken away in VR. Questions that came up are, how can we direct the audience's eyes and positioning them through space in VR? How do dancers hold space in VR when they may not be the main focus? And how do they do this while still maintaining presence? We also struggled with the scope of the current technology, mostly the internet speed. Unless the viewer logged on to the free Wi-Fi provided at the stops and downloaded the YouTube app, the streaming was painfully slow. There was just so many steps it took to just watch. Even with that, we had about 200 viewers that jumped through the hoops. Because it was a free public installation, the viewers were watching through their cell phones rather than through VR headsets. So even less was visually seeable. The funding and the presenting organization was thrilled to have a VR project as part of the summer festival. I believe it was the first VR project in Kansas City, or at least art-based, but they struggled with promotion. They tried to advertise it in the same way they did the live performances and the visual art installations. Decals were placed on the ground, as you see here. Unfortunately, most of the people didn't see them. Not enough promotion was done via email and social media. And I feel that if more projects in the festival used technology, the festival may have developed a larger resource and presence for accessing the work online. But really what it came down to was word of mouth, so kind of as low-tech as you can get. All things I would keep in the mind in the future is to add budget to supplement my budget to add to what the presenters may not know they would need to do to get people to access the work. All in all, I feel like I got my feet wet with VR, and I want to do it again, which is great. I feel that there really is for me an important research and project using VR, and that Public Squared got me one step closer to finding what that is for me, and that really experience is your best teacher. So you just have to work with the medium, with the camera, with the footage. I would say to be prepared to rewrite the standards you work by, that there really is a learning curve, and I found it to be steep, but I feel like the payoff for artists, for the public, and for the growth of this technology is worth it. Thank you.
Ha 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 ha!